Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. So, as you said, my name is Ulrich Hoff. I'm a senior advisor at the Technical University of Denmark. And it's a true pleasure to be able to present some recent developments on demonstrations of QKD in Denmark, together with sort of key stakeholders, namely the financial sector and the public utilities sector. Let's see if this clicker works. Right. Oh, one step forward. All right. So the quest for information security is an ever-ongoing technological race where we're constantly trying to develop new schemes to prevent people from accessing our most vital data. So we've developed in this field from very basic technologies like the substitution cipher here, sort of basic ideas, to more intricate electromechanical systems, over, in more recent times, to algorithmic-based schemes for asymmetric encryption, which has more or less taken over the field by now. But we're right now entering a new era where we can harness quantum phenomena to establish quantum-secure communication, where the security is no longer rooted in assumption about computational complexity, but rather in the phenomena of physics or the laws of nature. So why should we be concerned with that? Why should we be concerned with developing quantum-secure communication? Well, RSA is very widespread, and it's used in about 90% of our online traffic, and it's used for digital handshakes when we communicate with each other securely. So it's very, very important for our communication and for information security. However, it's also been known for a long time that RSA is running out of road, if you may say, because we know that with the advent of quantum computers, the complexity or the mathematical complexity that we rely on for RSA will no longer hold, because we know there are efficient algorithms that can do the prime factorizations. That is the core problem for RSA. So the question is no longer if a quantum computer will appear, but rather when it will appear. I guess we all agree on that it's going to be here sooner or later. We just need to figure out when that will happen. The Global Risk Institute, they made a survey among experts last year, and from that survey one can sort of figure out that it's common belief that quantum computers are capable of breaking RSA encryption will materialize within the next 15 years or so. There's a 50-50 chance of this happening. If we go a little further into the future, the probability of quantum computers at that scale just goes bigger and bigger and bigger. So we should start preparing for that. In 15 years, it's not a whole lot if you have to migrate your entire information security infrastructure, not to mention developing the hardware behind that. We should also bear in mind that the development of quantum computers is happening on two sort of frontiers at the same time. Coming up from the bottom, we have the hardware development. It's really, really tough, and it's taking a while to get to this regime where we have fault-tolerant logical qubits. But at the same time, we also have algorithmic developments coming down fast from the top, constantly reducing the amount of resources that are needed to run algorithms on quantum computers. And it's sort of the crossing of these two developments that will determine when quantum computers are capable of breaking, say, RSA or doing other very interesting tasks for us. So how do we mitigate this threat from quantum computers? Well, there are different ways of doing it. One way is to go to symmetric encryption. It's because, symmetric encryption schemes like AES, there are no known efficient quantum algorithms for breaking that. The only attacks we know of are based on Grover search, but they don't scale in the same way as, for example, Shor's algorithms for prime factorizations. The problem we need to solve to enable AES encryption is we need to figure out how can we distribute a symmetric shared secret between the communicating parties without a third party getting access to this secret. If we can do that, or achieve that, then we can use symmetric encryption and be safe and protect ourselves against quantum computers. One way of achieving this symmetric secret secure sharing is quantum key distribution. So this is a hardware encryption scheme where we use quantum mechanics to generate the keys and distribute it between the parties. And it's a way to achieve what's called information theoretic security in principle. So we can prove the security of our encryption. This little quote from the ETSI organization also tells us that if we go to QKD, we can actually have a sort of everlasting security of our encryption, because there's no way you can break QKD retrospectively. This is true if your authentication is not compromised during the time of the key exchange. This is even the case if the authentication is based on computational complexity. So as long as you keep it safe at the moment when you exchange the keys, it will basically be safe forever. This is a very nice way to merge PQC and QKD, because they can, if you merge them together, you can complete both of these tasks, the authentication, and then afterwards achieving quantum secure keys. Right, so what is quantum key distribution? Well, it's a scheme where two parties exchange quantum states, and based on that, they distill a code. So Eve, the sender, is randomly encoding states into non-orthogonal or indistinguishable quantum states, transmitting them to Bob, and he's then doing measurements on these states that he don't know on beforehand. And that way, they generate two sets of data. One set of data on what is encrypted, so the states used for encryption, and the measurement outcomes. From those sets of data, they can afterwards distill a key that can be used for symmetric encryption. The strong benefit of QKD is that you can avoid any third party or eavesdropper gaining information about the key that you're exchanging. That's due to, in part, the randomness of quantum measurements and the no cloning theorem of quantum information. So an eavesdropper can, of course, try to intercept the states that are being exchanged, but if she does, she will inevitably leave a fingerprint on the states that are being transmitted from Eve to Bob. That fingerprint will later on turn up in the error rates of Alice and Bob's keys. So they can sort of publish a small subset of their key material, look for the error rate, and if that error rate is larger than a pre-calibrated number based on the hardware that they're using, they will know that something happened, and whatever that is, it will be attributed to an eavesdropper. In the case that you have more error rates than you expect, you just cancel the communication completely and start all over, and just keep doing that until you know for sure that no one compromised your key. So with QKD, you know already at the point of key exchange if someone is trying to play around with you or mess around with your security. So this is very important because you're not transmitting anything else but random numbers at this stage. There's no data being compromised, only random numbers. So at DTU, we're developing QKD technology in a national innovation project together with a very broad, diverse consortium of academic partners, industry partners providing hardware. So we have Cryptomatic providing key management systems. They're also delivering to defense sector. We have CyberSafe providing hardware encryptors that can do AES based on QKD-generated keys. We have all the research expertise from DTU, from Aarhus University, laser know-how from NKT Photonics, and very importantly, too, we have very important stakeholders or end users of the technology in the shape of the largest Danish bank called Danske Bank, and the national operator of the transmission systems for gas and electricity called Energinet. Those are really strong use cases for QKD, because I don't think there's anyone else who cares more about security than financial sector and the public utilities sectors, because you really, really want to keep that information in the bank secure and safeguard the critical infrastructures of your nation. So we're very happy about this consortium. The specific type of flavor that we're developing is called continuous variable QKD. It resembles classical communication quite a lot, but whereas classical QKD or telecom uses states that are far apart or an alphabet that can easily be distinguished, we use weak modulations, and that way we can generate states that are overlapping where the quantum noise is overlapping, and that makes these indistinguishable states that can be used for QKD key exchange. The resemblance with classical telecom also means that we can piggyback on technology, so we can use readily available lasers, modulators, and we don't have need for expensive single-photon detectors. We can rely on rather simple, coherent detection schemes such as homodyne and heterodyne detection. Everything done at room temperature and at fairly low costs. Right, so in 2020, KPMG Denmark called us and said we would very much like to initiate the first demonstration of QKD in Denmark, actually in the Nordics. They knew we had the know-how on the technology. We also had the CryptQ project going on with this broad consortium where we were developing the hardware, and we even had a very important end user in there as well. So we agreed, let's go with this. Let's try to push this project and push a demonstration and do that within a year or so. So that's what we decided to do, and more specifically, we decided to deploy QKD for securing point-to-point communication between two servers within Danske Bank's organization. That led to 1 year of intense hardware development, taking us from something very basic, a lab setup, through various innovation steps towards a 19-inch rack system containing all the electronics, all the optics, tested, characterized, being able to operate under various conditions, not controlled conditions as in the lab, but in a real field environment. And then finally put together in the rack, together with computers for post-processing, AES encryptors from CyberSafe, basically the whole system. Then that was wheeled over to Danske Bank, installed at their facilities, and the demonstration was run, showing that we can actually use these keys in a non-lab setting. So I'll just take 2 slides to open up the hood a bit for this technology, show you what's in there. In these boxes, we have, so there's a transmitter and a receiver box on the left and the right side, and they're combined with the network encryptors. We have 2 channels, one for classical communication, one for the quantum communication. And the 2 channels are put together in wavelength division multiplexing units. Then there's a link between the sender and receiver. On either side, there are computers that take care of data processing, distillation of the key, and in the end also using that key for sending data securely between the 2. In this case, via a secured VPN connection, where it's the AES encryptor that sort of secures the link, and then the 2 computers just act as the endpoints, the clients for this link. Diving a bit into the process, you can see what are the steps involved in running the system. So there is the very basic level exchange of quantum states up here in the top. Alice modulates states, passes them on to Bob. He performs his measurements over here. Then they have their data generated on either side. You go through information reconciliation steps, parameter estimations to figure out what are the error rates in our measurements. What is the, how many errors can we tolerate? How much must we attribute to an eavesdropper? You do go through final privacy amplification to really make sure you have key with perfect randomness that can be used for the encryption. Then afterwards, you use that key in your AES hardware encryption modules to establish a secure VPN link, and then you run your application, whatever that might be. It doesn't really matter what data is being transferred. The only important thing is that the link is secured. Right, so we completed this test, and it was well received in media in Denmark, because this was in fact the first demonstration, not just in Denmark, but also in the Nordics, of quantum technology, of QKD technology, quantum key distribution, and we're very happy about that. And we also, in the demonstration, simulated the presence of an eavesdropper, so trying to attenuate the signal in order to sort of make the impact on the quantum states transmitted that an eavesdropper would do. And we could show that even for a tapping ratio up to 20-30%, we're still able to generate key. And in the case of no tapping, we're actually generating keys here with of size megabits, a few megabits. So more than enough to run our applications. Right. A second use case, so I mentioned we had Energinet, this national operator for transmission systems in there, is not just to go in the bank, but also try to take it really into the fields and try to secure the electricity grid in Denmark. Because there's a growing threat on that as well. We constantly hear about new attacks on critical infrastructure, so there's a need for securing the information there as well. We're looking into a first field test here with Energinet. We're really taking it into the field, as you can see. So this is not just in a controlled office environment, as in the bank, but really out in the field. And we'll do a demonstration of one of these subsystems of Energinet. One of the first tests we will do is to figure out, is it at all feasible to operate QKD in this environment? Because this is very rough. In particular, there's a lot of electromagnetic interference present due to all these transformers. So we need to figure out, can our boxes or devices operate in that environment? And we need to figure out, can they operate for short links, for longer links, or can they also operate if they're subject to individual EMIs from different substations, if you have links between different substations? We don't know. We can do our best to protect the system, casing everything from EMI, but we need to do field tests to figure out if this is actually feasible at all. And in fact, this is already planned. So in June, not far from now, we have a 2-week measurement campaign scheduled with Energinet, where we'll go into the substation with our devices, check that it works, and this will be our first very important step towards a larger demonstration of QKD in the electricity grid in Denmark. We're very excited about this. Right. In the last minute, I would like to come back to the bank use case, because doing a point-to-point demonstration was just the first thing. We would like to go further than that. So our ambition is really to go into the data centers of the Danish banks, in particular Danske Bank, and we're already planning that second use case as well. That puts even harder requirements or constraints on our hardware, because now it has to be compliant with all the industry standards for data centers. Otherwise, they will not allow it in. It has to be fully autonomous, has to be installable by technicians. We will not be allowed to go in there. Has to boot itself, run on its own. And that's a big task for us to go to that technology readiness level. But we're doing that. And in the preparation of that demo, we decided to write up a white paper on the applications of QKD in data centers. We did that together with KPMG, Danske Bank, and Copenhagen FinTech, who funded the project. And that has resulted in this recently released white paper, which I encourage you to download. And I also encourage you to interact with us based on your readings of the paper. Let us know your comments, inputs, whatever. We are open to updating it, and we are very, very interested in having your comments on this product here. Right, that's what I wanted to tell you about our demonstrations of QKD in Denmark. Thank you so much.
Great. Any questions for Ulrich? One back here. Oh, we got time. You're good.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
So was the implementation, these are co-located devices, or did you do this between distant points?
Well, they're separated by fiber link, right? So it was done in the same office, the same sort of premises of the bank, not two different locations. So I guess you would say co-located, but of course separated by a certain distance. Right.
Well, just curious.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. But in the future, we're moving on to do really non-co-located demonstrations over longer distances. We can tolerate up to about 10 dBs of loss in the system and still generate key. So that's that'll give you an idea of the range we have to work with.